I had a panic attack when I got up to speak, and I wanted to run out of the building.
Obviously, G, you reference, not just in these series, but in other series, you reference about your journey, and you reference about, the reality that you guys have been through significantly challenging things. And some of that has been in the context of what it is to lead. Some of it is in the context of marriage, of parenting, and obviously of, following Jesus. But in the context of, I guess, having a full soul. And you said in week 1 about taking our emotions, taking them off as the crown of who we are and our feelings, and putting our mind set on God's word as our crown. You've shared some stories over the years about times in your life where that's been pretty challenging. And I think about, obviously, you've referenced a few times about in business, you hit some moments where it was like really tough. Can you maybe just walk us through a particular moment that comes to mind where it's like you had a choice of what was going to have the crown in your life, and how you handled that?
Yeah, we'll probably start more as a young man growing up, because I think that's where those things began to take root, some of the unhealthy things. And it was really around being very introvert,
right,
and very nervous around people speaking publicly.
So, I mean, how bad was it? Because, I mean, not everybody knows.
I went to school, and my biggest, I went throughout school trying to avoid ever being asked a question. I'd try and be the grey person. It would be I would lie awake at night thinking the teacher might ask me a question.
Really?
And I would not know the answer. And it was like a nightmare for me. But even younger than that, I struggled. I was a very late sort of speaker, in the fact that they sent me for help at the hospital to actually
speech therapy.
Speak, yeah. And I used to speak through writing,
right,
as a child, rather than speaking to people.
Wow.
So I could express myself through letters, but not through saying how I felt, confrontation in a vocal way. Didn't have the eloquency to do it. So I would shut down. That was based in fear and this intimidation. And so even walking in my own home, if my parents had people around, I would end up being very anxious to walk into a room of people I didn't know. And I went through really life just trying to avoid. It was okay one-to-one person, but if I was in a group, I had nothing to say.
And what was the big driver behind that fear? Was it the fear of not having something to say, saying something wrong, looking stupid? Do you remember, or was it just overwhelming?
I think a fear that I wouldn't. It was around my self-worth, because I think no one wanted to hear my voice.
Right.
And so I had this. If I say something, it's going to be embarrassing. People aren't even going to want to hear. So I had this terrible embarrassment complex. So I could not speak to, even in a group, if I was to speak, my face would go red.
Wow.
And I'd know, and I'd want to be swallowed up.
So it's almost, again, it's that the physical outworking of that thing going on inside you.
Yeah. And so I wanted to hide from that. And I went even through Bible college, and I've shared this 3 years, because I've got this call on me. This is like God's humor. He calls me at 10 years old.
Yeah, because for some people that maybe don't know your story, obviously you had this, real challenge of how you're feeling inside. But then at 10, you meet Jesus and this call, and it's like, you've met him.
Yeah.
But the problem is it's going to include speaking, isn't it?
That's right. And so my course was to go to Bible college for 3 years. And what does everyone who goes to Bible college? They all want to preach, except for me. So they're all looking for opportunities. And I'm actually avoiding. And
there are some funny stories
and
about.
They got me in the 3rd year, and and it was like an awful experience. And then I left college, and we ended up planting out, for the first time all those years ago, 30 odd years ago. Well, I was not a fixed person. I was a mess, and I had to get up there. And I remember going through probably 3 different messages every Sunday, because none of them were any good. Because I would analyze everything Thought, what am I even doing? And this call that I had over my life was in conflict with my condition.
Wow.
And they were like battling with each other. And it was, I had these two voices always going on saying, why are you doing this? What? And I would get up there and sometimes freeze. I remember the first few years I read off a page. When I preached, I read off a page.
Because you used to write it out.
I'd write it out word for word because I couldn't ever imagine coming off the words. And if I looked up, I'd lose my place. And I had just all this fear of intimidation. And so the first few years that we did church, I operated through that, like, conflict. It didn't just, you hear the great stories of people just being set free. Well, I had to battle and fight for it.
But that I think is a huge statement you just said there, because there is no doubt. I mean, I fully believe, I've seen it, I've experienced it personally, and I would love to see and experience it more. But I think as Christians, we have this concept that God is going to click his fingers and he's going to touch our life and it's all going to be gone. And we see that at times in the Bible, don't we? And we see that even in freedom. But to just have that as the singular way he works is such a limited perspective, I guess.
The trouble with that is for those people that isn't the case. And there's lots of people listening to this right now who you're praying for some stuff, you're working through some of this stuff, that it's a process that might even take several years. It's pretty discouraging. You see the person who gets free just like that. And you say, oh, great, what about me? And it's to encourage you that God does not work in one particular way. He works he's able to do it that way, but it'll also work through a process of you journeying. And the thing with journeying, it builds character.
Right.
Because you go on a walk of consistency of, will you keep believing? Will you keep having the faith, keep having the patience in this? And that's part of what I was learning through that period. He was really preparing, I think, my soul. He was preparing me with my insecurities. And so much of that was my self-worth that God wanted to correct. He wanted to heal it. He wanted to move within me. And I think one of the big fears I had was probably to win the approval of people.
Right.
Because I never felt that I had that. I felt like I had to sort of somehow gain approval.
And I just say, I think that is something that many people, if you stop and are honest with yourself, that's just a huge thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's huge.
And it was, I wouldn't really say it and admit to it.
Yeah.
But looking back, I realized that I was fearful of what people thought about me. Was I accepted or not? And I didn't feel, why would people accept me? So when I came into leading church in those early years, God didn't send people along that were necessarily the ones that said, hey, you're great. You're such a great message. You're a great pastor. What a great church. We're going to stick with you through thick and thin. It was all the opposite. God sent to me the people that would pull me apart in my weakness. He sent people that would come and say, hey, we're with you. And then within sort of 6 months, they'd be gone through the back door.
Wow.
As well as criticizing you. We had people who would come and then say, well, we want to come and be honest with you. And here's a list of 10 things that we want to share. These are like individual criticisms. It's not about the way you do worship. This is about you as a person.
Wow.
And then I was more naive then. So I would just sit there and say, well, I probably deserve it. So I would open myself up for all this criticism.
Wow.
And I went down to quite a dark place because I saw more people leave us than join us. So I took that personally that, not even surprised.
It compounded the issue.
Yeah, who would want to follow me? And yet God's called me, this conflict, you see, the conflict of the call.
That statement alone, I think, is huge. That your calling was in conflict with your condition.
My condition.
And yet God's course of medicine wasn't the course of medicine that you would have picked.
Yeah, and we so think, oh God, come on, give me a break here. Give me someone that's going to stand by me and actually be loyal and be faithful. And what about sending us some people that are just more encouraging? He said, no, I'm going to send you the people that are actually going to, bring criticism. They're going to challenge you to the core because we're going to strip out of you the weakness that you've allowed to live in there.
Wow.
So I think there was something about God healing me of this abandonment that I feared by actually abandoning me through people leaving.
That's Yeah, I mean, but I think I think for many people, this is why I want to create this space, because there is something, we see you up and you're preaching, and you preach with, so much confidence and grace and boldness and authority. And I think there's many of us are like, oh, if only I was. But actually, it's kind of a dangerous prayer to pray, because if you start saying, God, I'm willing, he'll take you on that course. But like you said, it was the complete opposite of what you would have thought. Yeah. How, was there a tipping point for you?
Yes, there was. I think for a lot of that, I felt quite a victim. So when people kept leaving, I was there screaming out to God, thinking, after year, thinking, have I got this wrong? Have you called me to this? Because I suck at it. I must be the worst pastor ever. And I was, I saw all my failures. And then I think God started revealing some of this, fear I had of, I've got to please people. Mm-hmm. So when they leave, it does the opposite. It's like, in that way, I was a failure. So, and it dealt with the whole thing that I felt I was a failure all my life. I couldn't even speak as a child. You know what I mean? I had to write. So this thing within me was like, I'm just a failure. So it was coming through. I'm even fail at leading people. Mm-hmm. Yet God's called me. And I had a business. I was running a business at the time as well, because I'd been made redundant. So I thought, right, well, I'm going to have to make a living so I can run the church. So started a business, and in fact started probably several. And one of them, grew quite considerably. We invested for like a season of growth. And then, long story short, what happened was someone who owed us a lot of money went bankrupt.
Right.
And it happened overnight, unexpected. And what it did is that debt sort of impacted us because of our investment.
Yeah,
to a level that it knocked our whole business. And our house was actually tied in with the bank and everything. And we tried to sort of find a solution for that over the next year or so. But little by little, I had to sell up our factory and all our machinery. And I had to finish our staff till I was the only one left.
And that must have been... That's like knocking on all those doors for you.
Well, I'm still trying to get up and preach and struggling preaching. And then this is going on in my personal life.
Wow.
And so I was battling and contending with thinking, God, why has this happened? It was like just, it was a very difficult time. So I got professional advice, and they told me to make myself bankrupt. It'd be better to self-bankrupt, take control of it, because things are going to get nasty. Mm-hmm. And I spoke to Heather, and I just came to a point, I remember, where I came home. I had the forms for the bankruptcy you fill out, and the next day I was taking them to the court to bring an end to it.
Yeah.
This would result in us losing everything we had, the house that we built. We'd be put in social housing, et cetera, We had our fourth son about to be born.
Wow.
So it really threw up the questions of, oh, you're a great father, aren't you? It's like everything about being a father, a husband to Heather, a leader in the church. I thought I'm probably going to resign. And I'm going to So this bankrupt, it wasn't just some forms. This for me
They represented
my failure as a pastor, personally, as a husband, as a father. It was almost like everything.
Wow.
And at that point was probably my lowest point that night, where I just went upstairs and lay on the bed and gave up.
Wow.
And I've been struggling with depression for obviously quite a few, probably 9 months at that point. But it came to a point where I was overwhelmed and just gave up, because I've been trying to fight it. Mm. And I was up there, and Heather knew something was, it was in a bad place. So she got on the phone to a good friend of ours.
So, sorry, just like you, obviously because that's a profound moment, like we're talking about there. But it's almost like you said, you went upstairs, lied down, and it's like done, like... Can't do it, can't face it, can't you. So it's like you actually like you've done everything, and it's like finish point kind of thing. Yeah. What were you feeling in that moment? I obviously you've said about the failures and stuff, but the reason I ask is because I think this is going to be speaking. I know this is going to be speaking to a lot of people who think in those moments that they're the only one, when in reality, they're not.
Yeah, I couldn't see a way forward. Right. I think it was, for me, it was like all over. Everything was over, and I didn't want to see the world, and I didn't want to see anyone. And
Wow.
I'm so thankful for Heather, because it was her that sort of still had this hope and this amazing faith that like saw me in that state.
Wow.
And really, if she hadn't have taken the action she did, I probably wouldn't be here speaking now.
Wow.
And it's really, that's how real it was. It was over. It was like at the point where I came to, the lowest I could imagine. I couldn't see a way forward.
Yep.
And I was just surrounded really with, fear and hopelessness.
Wow.
So she went and phoned a friend who was like part of an intercessors group for the UK, and just asked her, and she prayed over the phone for us and for Heather. And I was still upstairs. I was just like out of it. And then she said to Heather, you need to go and pray for him now and tell him to get his fight back.
Wow.
And that was all it was. So she came. So Heather came.
No promise of any,
Yeah,
like,
that's
it's
right.
going to be, there's millions coming in the post tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, we'll help you out. Time to get his fight back. And so Heather came up, and she came up with this boldness.
Wow.
And even through this prayer over the phone, and she
Come
sort
on,
of
H.
rebuked my spirit in a way and said, it's not time to give up. Oof. It's time to fight.
Wow.
She prayed for me, and something came alive in me. It was just like a little, perhaps a pulse that came alive.
Like a defibrillator.
Yeah, it was. Because from that moment, that night, I had to sort of just begin to fight my way forward to, okay, I've just got to get through tonight. Then in the morning.
Wow.
And then in the morning, I made this decision to not, I think she might have even said, it's not a time to give up. And I thought, well, if I'm going to bankrupt, it's given up. So I put those forms in the bin.
Wow.
And then over the next coming days, God made another way for me to actually pay this debt over 3 years, which was a long process.
Yeah.
But he said, will you trust me with this? And,
Incredible.
And we went through this process the next few months where we got permission to almost hold off. We had a good business idea, and we built the business up from scratch. It was £1,000 we were given. So everything was stripped away. I sold our cars, everything. And the court gave us £1,000. And we then paid off about 100,000 in the next 3 years on top of living.
Wow.
And I built the business back up to it being bigger than it was before.
Wow.
Eventually we sold it so we could work full time for the church. But it was what was going on at that point. So I got this fight back. Mm-hmm. It was like, it's not over. Mm-hmm. But the important thing over all of it was God took me to such a low point of stripping away this idea of success I had in my heart was to impress people.
Right.
It was to, if you perform well as a husband, you perform well as a pastor, you perform well in these ways, maybe you'll make it. And now and God said, what is success?
Right.
Success is you being obedient. It's not about what you do.
Just, yeah, I mean, that's huge. So like, what is success? Success is being obedient. And obviously, like, I guess you'd had this picture in your head of success being these other things, but this was the turning point where it's actually obedience.
Yeah, and he said, you've been called. When are you going to start obeying it? Rather than giving me excuses. He said, it's not, you've been trying to perform all this time. You've been trying to win people, and I don't want you to win people in that way. I want you to actually be obedient to the call.
Wow.
So there's two different things. And being obedient to the call, you'll win the people you need to win. And so I started going on that, understanding and working it out. And I found God starting to free me. And he said, okay, we didn't know how the future would look. So he said, are you ready to give up everything? Even if it means going into that house that you're going to take your family and it's perhaps in a very difficult part of town, you willing to do that and still be obedient? Are you still, if your reputation is in ruins around the business side,
yeah,
are you still willing to be obedient and follow me with your call?
Wow.
And one by one, he went through the whole thing, and I came to a place where I surrendered it all. And this is where I did this thing with God and said to God, no matter what it looks like, I won't hold a deal with you anymore about, as long as this looks good, then I can be a good servant. And if I look to be a good pastor, then I can build a good church. And I laid it all down. I said, it doesn't matter. I don't care anymore what anyone thinks. And at this point, I put it all down and said, I don't care anymore. I'm not going to be governed by what people think anymore. And I got delivered from the fear of people at that moment.
Wow.
And it was like, I didn't care anymore.
Wow.
It was like, I didn't care whether, we had 10 people sat there on a Sunday or 1,000. I didn't care whether I had a big business or I was, I don't know, going to the supermarket to do a job there.
Yeah.
It was like, no, it's about who I was. So I discovered in this sort of whole soul full, I found a fullness within my soul.
Wow.
Through it being stripped, this stuff being stripped away. But it was around my identity, around who I was. And that was the journey I went on. Again, a process took place because I didn't suddenly become Superman.
Yeah.
I didn't suddenly become this person who just gets up there and doesn't. I had to deal with the fears and the challenges still came. I would still get up on a Sunday, and for many years to come, I've shared this, that I would have a panic attack at the cave a few years ago. I had a panic attack when I got up to speak, and I wanted to run out of the building. And be, I'm going to get up and give this message. I have a panic attack. So I have this, I'm aware of my weakness, of just feeling the pressure of that. And I almost don't want to get up in front of people.
Yeah.
But I know God's called me to do it.
Wow.
And so I've learned now that through it, even when I get those panic attacks, I've learned to really take hold of this imagination of my mind.
Yeah.
It's imagination
that
gets us into trouble. I imagine things that aren't actually real. God's word is real. His spirit is real. His love for me is real. The things that I imagine are normally out of fear.
Right.
They're normally out of things that might, or, what happens and can I do this? And am I going to fail? And then he comes in and says, no, remember what I did for you.
Wow.
I delivered you from this.
Amazing.
So then I take hold of this imagination of the mind and cause those things to become captive and be obedient to Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's the fruit of the Spirit.
Come on.
Be obedient to Jesus of these things, in gentleness, in self-control, in peace, in all these things. That's what I'm going to set my mind to.
Amazing.
And that's what I still practice today. And that's how I sort of keep going forward, and God has continually strengthened me. But I know that I can't do it without him.
Come on. That's profound. And I think it's just so, I know a little bit more of some of the journey than most, but even just hearing it again, what's powerful about it is it's a testimony. It's not just a story, it's a testimony. And obviously the Bible talks about there being power in our testimony, not just, to tell what happened, but actually to transfer what happened. And I think even as we're kind of finishing up this now, I guess for both of us, there'll be a heart that this testimony is going to be, even as people are going through Liberty Week, going through the Soulful series, maybe you're on your bed moment and this is your get back up, don't give up. Maybe you are, you're back up and, but you're hitting another challenge. Maybe you haven't hit that part, but actually even still, I know it'd be your heart that people don't need to get to that place in order to experience the change within them as well. I guess kind of one last sort of question is, I think some people, me included in previous kind of sort of moments, would assume that freedom in Christ is an absence of temptation, and freedom in Christ, you don't battle with it anymore. But obviously, like with your story, I don't think you would for a second say you're not free. And yet you have these moments and wrestles. How do you balance that? And how do you see freedom? And as in, if that's what people are listening to this, that's what I want, freedom. What's that mean?
I think that every day I have the choice to live in freedom.
Right.
I have the ability to live in that freedom because Christ, he came to set me free. And within it, though, I've got to choose to walk in it and live in it. And for me, it's a daily thing. The moment that I just presume, job done. Now, he paid the price once and for all. We know that.
Yeah.
But living in freedom is constant choices. It's constant conflict with the things that you might, you're more likely to be led to or led to think.
Yeah.
So I might struggle to step forward. So I have to continually say, no, God, you're my strength.
Yeah.
And I just remember 2 Timothy 1:7, which was tattooed on my heart, because that whole thing around not giving you a spirit of fear,
Yeah.
of timidity, because that's who I was.
Right.
But of love, of power, and sound mind. So I like tattooed it on me, and every day I quoted it.
Wow.
And it's something that I had to keep, I had to live by and grab. Did I still feel fearful each day? Yeah, those moments came, but I said, no, I choose to live in freedom.
Come on.
And we'll all have different areas, where we struggle and someone else might, they live in complete freedom. But we're like, why am I battling with this? Why am I battling with it? But that's where character is proven. That's where sometimes that's the thing that you're going to need to be aware of. Sometimes it can be your Achilles heel.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
I think it's that thing that if we learn to understand ourselves more about those areas that we struggle, maybe around whether that's mental health, whether it's anxiety, stress, I'm negative, I can be critical, I can be... If you understand those things, because they normally come knocking on the door, at least once a day.
Yeah.
And then if you recognize it, you smell it and you see it.
Yeah.
So it's like I could easily slip back into that if I'm not aware of it, but being aware of it strengthens me.
Yeah.
So through my weakness, I become strong.
Come on.
That's what that's about. It's not about, I'm always strong. No, when I realized that I can be weak without him,
Yeah.
then I can become strong because I'm aware of my weakness. And I think there's too many of us that just think, hey, yep, that's done, I'm sorted, and I am Superman. That's when Superman ends up finding kryptonite.
Yeah.
And he ends up in trouble. So I think there's something about knowing who we are, that we need Jesus, and every day that's what draws me to my time with him before I step out of bed. Is like, I need you today, I need you, and I want to always need you.
Yeah.
I can't do this without you. And there's this dependence that I want to grow more and more of, just needing him to be with me. And the choices I make daily to live in freedom, that's a choice we all have to make, no matter where we are. Like you said, if it's on the bed, if you've been battling something for years, right? And I know I'm speaking to some people that perhaps it's an addiction, or it's a way of thinking. It's maybe it's around self-esteem. Maybe it's around rejection. Do not give up. Do not give up. That's I think the main thing is like, do something. If it is just get off the bed, God will always put people in your life like Heather to speak and say, come on, get your fight back. That's why we should never remove ourselves from church.
Yeah, it's huge, isn't it? Community.
Because see, the enemy wants to isolate you. I didn't want to see anyone. But Heather comes in and says, no, come on. He'll always put a voice in your life, but it's up to you to respond to it.
Wow.
And just move or do something. And even though it might take some time, just take a day at a time, a week at a time. He will work out, and you will find yourself further ahead than you think.
Come on.
Some of you are only like perhaps halfway there, but as soon as you got halfway, you may as well finish the other half.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, I'm encouraging you.
Come
God
on.
is for you, and he wants you to live a life with a full soul. And that's our passion and vision for every one of you.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Gee, it's been awesome and just thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability, because I think it's going to speak volumes to us all. And I'm excited to have you back, because I would love to just talk to you more about some of the other times of these seasons and what you learned about being a father, what you learned about following God, and how you did all those different things, because I think there's something so fantastic. So we're going to wrap this up. And I guess we want to kind of bring it back to this question. What are you going to do this week? You had the message on Sunday, you've listened to this. Now it's time to take action. Get out of your bed and do something.